What's up, everyone? I'm James Baney, and I'm here to talk about another episode of The Bad Batch. This week, we are talking about episode 10, Retrieval. Now, as I sort of speculated last week, this is sort of a part 2 of our part 1. We found out a little bit more about the person who stole the vehicle, the ship, and we got the ship back, and we sort of resolved that story. So now we've sort of reset everything, and we can go back into just regular episodes, which I think there's an industry term for that. I'm not sure, because this one obviously carried over, and we saw what happened. But usually in like sitcom type shows, there's a term for when everything gets reset by the end of the episode, and then the next episode could just start fresh. And it's sort of like you could almost put them in different orders or whatever. I'm not sure what the term is. If you know, put it in the comments. So here's the thing. From my perspective, I liked this episode, but only sort of in theory and not so much in execution, because this particular story to me felt like it was one of those overused stories. Now, we've seen stuff like this used in Star Wars a lot. Like it's not exactly, but it's kind of similar to that like Seven Samurai type story where you have your heroes go into a new world, and they discover all these people who are poor or slaves or being worked or whatever the situation is. And there's like one leader who's like reaping all the benefits and you know, doing all this bad stuff, and they just sort of need to eliminate that person, and then all of a sudden everybody's free and everybody's very thankful to the heroes and they owe them everything and all this stuff. But it felt to me like I wasn't totally bought in on this story. But the one thing that sort of redeemed it for me is that there was a point in this where they were saying there's a lot of people like them in the galaxy, and there's a lot of people like us too. But it sort of pointed to me as a way of saying, yeah, this is happening all over, this same scenario. People are being taken advantage of all over the place, and they're just striving to get by. I mean, I'll talk a little bit more about the details of that later, but I think in general what they're trying to say is even if you feel like you've seen this story before, it's because it's happening over and over and over again. And I think they actually did a good job at pointing out in this episode how that is the case, and that sort of saved it for me. But I gotta be honest, I really did not like this villain, this head honcho, Mako. He reminded me sort of an Unkar Plutt, but sort of Unkar Plutt in a way seemed competent. This was a weird scenario. Like, here's the thing. You got all these kids who are very capable. They seem like they sort of have their own friend systems and stuff. And then on top of that, they're also capable of stealing ships, stealing them, flying them. And I know like flying ships and stuff is a little bit more normal in Star Wars, but like being able to come through go through a plan of like how these kids are constantly like hijacking things and stealing them and all this, I feel like they would be just a little bit smarter than this guy who is pushing it even further to making these kids do this like all this crazy manual labor and like stealing things, and there's this whole ranking system, but like yet he never shows them any of the results. He just sort of tells them who the winner is, and the winner gets like half drank cups of water. Like, you need to be providing more water than that. I understand you could limit them and keep them under your control in that way, but like, wow, like this, they're like striving for water rations, and the big prize winner of that like week or month or whatever it was got like an extra bowl of soup. I was like, oh my gosh, like something's not right. These kids at this point should be outsmarting this person, because he seems kind of dumb. He seems like he's pushed the limits of like taking the goods for himself and giving back little portions too much, and he's kind of a stupid villain in my opinion. Speaking of these kids, though, I think it's funny. I was watching the episode and I kept thinking to myself, I was being taken sort of out of Star Wars or the Bad Batch or, you know, Clone Wars, all this stuff, out of that for a minute, because a lot of the character designs in this show reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy. So go back and look, because all shows do this, right? They hide those little background characters, like they cover up their eyes or whatever, and you can't really see their faces. There's main characters, so you see their faces, and then everybody else, they kind of like put a mask on or something. Go back and look at all these kids and look at their character designs and, the villains and the droids and all the other stuff. I felt at times like I was watching an episode of a Final Fantasy series, maybe like, I don't know, Final Fantasy 10 or 15 or something. Like, just the way the characters design felt more like a Final Fantasy animated series than it did Star Wars, only in this episode. But I think it's because this particular factory or something looked that way to me. So I don't know. Go back, let me know what you think. Put that in the comments as well. But there were quite a few things that I liked about this episode, including a couple of scenes that I got to mention. Number one being Baney riding the like hover bike around. The way the camera follows him, the cinematography of that mixed with the choreography of where the characters are. He comes around the corner, Wrecker immediately like knocks him off, and the camera like jilts back to it. It was so good, surprising. He gets up off the ground and immediately runs into Omega, who was already prepared, makes them look like a team, and I loved it. It was really well put together. I loved that shot. And another one being Omega getting ready to be tossed off of the thing into the magma. Hunter shoots that thing up, and Omega sees it and goes, oh, yep, I know what to do here. She flips the droid around. She pulls the droid off and kicks off backwards, somehow manages to like grab onto Hunter's hand and get rescued. It's like they were so perfectly choreographed. And I think it's good that this episode pointed out how well they work in a team, because that alone would be really ridiculous. Like, even if you think like Cirque du Soleil aerial acrobats doing that, it's already crazy. But she just is like, oh, I'm totally confident. There's a pool of lava. I'm 100 meters above this pool of lava, and I'm gonna be fine. Backflipping and totally confident that Hunter's gonna be able to be in that exact spot where I can grab his hand. But again, I don't think I really got pulled out that much. I kind of believed it because they did such a good job at showing in this episode how the team works together, including going down the pipe. We got 60 seconds. That's how we do things. We don't stop. He needs to go. He's got 5 seconds left. He rolls it. He figures it all out. Like, they worked so well as a team. That's why I watched The Bad Batch. So I got to give points to this episode. The action scenes were great, and I loved them. Now, the way it all ends, Baney obviously comes out. He says, hey, you've been fooling us. And the guy's caught between things, Mako, whatever his name is, dummy. And he's caught between the two things. And then he totally has that moment where like he falls off the edge and Baney grabs him and he's like, I'm going to try to help you up. But then he's like a stupid villain. So he's like, you should have, blah, blah, blah. Then he ends up getting knocked off into the lava. And I'm like, good. This guy sucks. And I mean, he doesn't suck as in like a villain where like Snoke's a good villain and you're like happy to see him dead because he's a bad person, but like he's still a good villain. This guy's like a bad villain that I'm happy to see he's dead because he's dumb. I don't know. I just didn't really like that character at all. And I was happy to see him go. I'm happy to see that it got resolved with Baney sort of being able to lead everybody into this new generation, I guess, of workers where they all seem to have food and water and everything. And obviously this is because of the Bad Batch. This is the point of the show, is they helped these people. But I'm excited to see Baney come back. I'm excited to see more episodes with those characters if they decide to do that in either later this season or season 3, or maybe in like a book like Bad Batch and Beyond, or whatever they want to call the novel that comes later, so we can continue with more of the characters. I hesitate to pull that string a little bit, but like, is this a possible love interest for Omega that could go down the line? I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think. But I mean, that's basically it for this week. The episode was all right. It was fine. It had a couple good moments in it, but I don't feel it was like any sort of big game changer or anything like that. But I'm happy that we got it. If you guys want to continue watching videos of the Bad Batch reaction show, good time right now is subscribing, leaving a thumbs up, leaving a comment, getting into the discussion. Let's have the discussion and make sure you're ready for next week when we're talking about episode 11. Hopefully we see some cool stuff. At this point, I have no speculation of where it could be going, so we'll just find out together. Until then, I've been James Baney, and I'll see you next week.